And that's another thing that we haven't really talked about, is keeping track of all the tenders you've got and when you need to get them and what dates. But it's so powerful to go and follow up, an exact time to ask if you've got any questions about the tender and all of that, especially if you're at that stage of business where you're like trying to go up the pecking order of jobs. I find frequently CRM particularly is one of those terms that is used by builders, people wanting things within their business and often not actually knowing what it is. We've had quite a few times, right, where somebody said CRM, but then mid pitch or mid something, they're like, I actually don't know what a CRM is, and so it's quite a misused term, isn't it? And I misuse it sometimes as well. Do you want to start with, again, like defining it for somebody that maybe doesn't know what we're talking about at all?
I guess the simple way that I would look at it is, I mean, it is in the name, client relationship manager or customer relationship manager, and it's your phone book, your place where you have all your contacts, whether that's businesses, whether that's suppliers, whether that's leads, things like that. And I think where things can kind of get a bit confusing is with builders in particular, they can often confuse project management with a CRM, because often, when someone goes through that pipeline, they're a lead, and then all of a sudden they're a client, and then you're doing a project for them. They just think, right, that's all just one thing, which it can be one thing. And that's, we like to connect them. Really, today, I think we're just talking about the CRM aspect, the client, the lead management, things like that.
Project management side of things, is that part of the CRM? Is that how you'd usually define it?
I don't.
Okay.
Because I think some people run their projects very differently, and I think CRMs, especially when we're talking about sales pipelines, can be more similar, whereas project management gets a bit, depends on if people are working with architects, if people are working, if they're just leads that have come onto their website, etc. Like the way they run those projects can vary. So, and if it's commercial,
we find that as well, right? That pretty much everybody's process of getting jobs, after you get past where they get the job lead from, to kind of lock the job in, is pretty much the same. It's just about how they choose to run the job after is where you get all the variations. So, is there an analogy then for the project side that is usually used? Because I feel like, and I think I'm guilty of this, using CRM as a catch-all term to kind of cover that side of things as well.
I think a lot of people do. I mean, just to kind of explain it in opposition to the project management side, I'd say the project management side is like, once you've won the job, how are you running things? Although I think a good CRM still holds all the information of contacts such as suppliers who you're in continual contact with, what during a job, pre-job, etc. So I think that's also why it can get a bit confusing.
So if and maybe we can separately talk about the kind of project management side, and if we're focusing on the kind of, as I understand it, the process of getting a lead in, quoting that job and winning the job, tracking that process is the main function of the CRM. If most guys, I think, are probably doing it to some form on WhatsApp on their phone, maybe have a spreadsheet to kind of to manage the leads, and also obviously email as well. Is that essentially a form of CRM but not a formalized way, and then the CRM is when you put it in a software? Or would you say that
I would say
you don't have a CRM until you actually use like a piece of software to capture it?
I'd say that's not a CRM, but that is where all the information lives, where you would then be putting that all together. I think this is really important for construction businesses, because owners often overlook this aspect of their business, right? They they might get some leads through referral. They might get some people coming on their website if they've got a decent website, Googling them, things like that.
Yeah.
And then they can get a bit complacent, and then they stop following up on people or things. They just forget that oh, there was that quote I did, but I never followed up on them to check if they were interested, etc. And that's why I think it's important to not just have it randomly in your email, in your WhatsApp, and all these things. But I mean, you have real life experience of implementing this into your business, so and it'd be interesting to know at what point did you realize that I need to have
I
a
gotta
CRM.
say, I came off starting our construction company off the back of another company in a completely unrelated field that already had some traction. So had already implemented a CRM in that. I'm trying to think. So I think to answer the kind of question, it was not in a construction sense, but I realized I felt like it was a sense of anxiety around like just constantly having to remember, I didn't hear from that person, and just in my head. And I think my nature, I was on top of it in my head, but I just didn't like that anxiety. And my general way of working is if I feel some sort of anxiety, that's enough for me to want to do something, because I just feel like that's a big waste of energy and space for something to take in my head. So I'd say I was already sold on the idea of having something to organize my sales pipeline before starting the construction business. And then once that was there, I kind of used at the time a CRM called Zoho, and just moved straight on and started that with the construction company. I think one thing that was interesting, particularly because I was in the residential sector, but I think this is applicable for all construction, is it was pretty amazing how much work that our business was able to capture just by following up. And I'm talking like one follow-up or two follow-ups. And I and you are quite well known for being quite relentless with follow-ups, because there's something, we know how much money is left on the table, just to, not just in construction, but in the construction sector. It's crazy, like how much business I knew I was just getting, just because I was the only one that was, like, at the time phoning them and saying, did you get the quote? Did you have any questions? And then once they said, I'm going on holiday next month because my sister's having a baby, and you're, on writing all that down, and then you call them exactly 1 month later and say, did you see the baby and all of that? It's like you can actually really get a lot of work just from doing that. So that, I agree that it's really, really valuable thing to look at from a construction sector. And I think it's applicable if you're in commercial as well. If you think about, if you're a subcontractor and a main contractor, QS is sending a package out to you and you're sending the tender back to them, hopefully by the date that they ask. And that's another thing that we haven't really talked about, is keeping track of all the tenders you've got and when you need to get them and what date. But it's so powerful to go and follow up, an exact time to ask if you've got any questions about the tender and all of that. Especially if you're at that stage of business where you're like trying to go up the pecking order of jobs. So most of the time, for any business owner that's trying to grow, you're always trying to get the bigger job or the more specialist job that you kind of trying to get out of your depth a little bit. And the other person is always like, they're good, they're keen because they're following up, but the drawback is that, they don't have the experience, they don't have as much of a portfolio as this guy, but this guy never follows up. He just treats me like, I'm just another kind of job on the list, and if you get it, you get it kind of thing. So that's quite...
It's a reflection on how you'll run the job as well, I think, from the client's point of view. It's like and we've spoken to homeowners where they go, well, they never got back to me. Like, I got all these quotes, but then they never got back to me. And then obviously on the builder's side, it's often like they don't pick up, or Yeah, but how many times did you actually try? Maybe you tried to call them
Yeah.
in the middle of the day when they're probably in the office or they're probably working, and you didn't try again, or something, or you didn't drop them a message as well, something like that.
What's your thoughts on? I'm sure there's many listening out there that would be like, oh, I'm not desperate, and I'm not begging for the work. I don't like kind of thing, because I think there is something to say in that, in truth, that you might give off some sense that you're desperate, that you really need the work, and especially with construction where there is, I don't know, like a bit of a cowboy reputation. Depends on what industry you are and how well known you are to the
Yeah,
client. But especially if someone is kind of calling you cold from Google, they don't know how well known you are, how reputable you are, and there could be a feeling or a fear of, you're just coming off across as, yeah, like you're just really keen for the work. So, what do you think about that?
I think it depends, because I think it's, if you're just starting out, the reality is you need the work. So yeah, maybe you're coming off desperate because, I'm not saying you're desperate, but yeah, you need the work. You want to go out there. You want to get more work. And I hope the young guys out there starting, construction companies are of that mindset. They should be. We need people to be thinking more in that kind of like business development mindset of, I need to get more work, not just rely on, I've got a few jobs through mates or people I know, and then I'll just kind of like see where this takes me type thing.
Yeah,
Because a good business could fail before it even really takes off. So in one way, I would say, well, that um, honesty is a good thing. To be like, I'm
yeah,
starting out. Yeah, I'm calling you because I really want work. The other aspect of it is, if you know the kinds of jobs you like, the kinds of jobs you're really good at, it's really valid to be going after those jobs.
yeah,
If someone sends you, or you've sent a quote, and you get however many quotes in a week, month, and you sent them out, and you see some ones that are really good, and you're like, I know I could do a great job here. It could be on my portfolio. It's gonna look amazing at the end. Like, I've done a similar job like this before. Then again, you're not going after the job due to desperation. It's more like, you can do a good job. It's going to be mutually beneficial for you and the client, whether that's a homeowner or if it's a commercial contract or whatever.
the other thing I was just thinking there, this applies to many other areas of life, and I might be getting a bit like woo woo here, but often if you think that you're coming across desperate by quoting or chasing a quote, it's probably because you judge others that chase you as coming across desperate. Another whole area of it is actually maybe just working on your own mindset and changing your perception of, let's say, the steel company that keep chasing you because they've got cheaper rates than the guy next door or down the road. And you might have previously seen that as desperate, but if you actually start to look at that as, oh, that guy's hungry, that guy's into business development, then suddenly your perception of that. Because I remember when I was cold calling, and this is a warning to anyone out there, don't start cold calling me now. But I started opening up to cold calls. So when someone would cold call me, I'd be like, yeah, like, what have you got to sell? Pitch me. And that changed my perception of how it was for me to cold call, because I was like, well, it's cool, it's just business. And again, now I've put things in place to stop myself getting cold called, because it is a little bit of a disruption. And maybe that's something that I've got to look at as well. But yeah, that's another,
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
thing
I
to think
think
about.
I think definitely I've literally had this conversation. I don't know whether you'd call it coaching, but just sort of mentoring some people starting businesses. And one of the things that and it's not just calls, it's emails, it's following up. It's like, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to. We have this perception, probably through the media, of the slimy sales guy or whatever. And don't get me wrong, there are a bunch of people selling shit out there. There's definitely
Hmm.
those people out there. again, like I said before about just being honest, I think being honest is such an important thing, and it's just something that just doesn't really matter the medium. Most of the time it does seep through, and the person's like, oh, okay, right, this person's genuine, and then you build a proper relationship with them, and that generally works in your favor throughout or in both of your favor, really. So yeah, there's definitely this psychological element of feeling sleazy or whatever. But I'd say once we're talking about following up here. We're not even talking about, initially going
Outbound.
out and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do think there's something to be said for, and this is certainly the residential market. There's something to be said from the homeowner's point of view that they can be disrespectful in not really respecting the time that someone's put in creating a quote and then not even bothering to respond, or when someone does call them, they're just, they never have time to call them back or whatever it is. I think definitely that plays a part into it as well, because builders probably think, what's the point? Like, if they're interested, they'll call me, and because whenever I'm sending out all these things. I don't know if you had that when you were building up your business.
Yeah. What you mean in terms of people just not responding?
Taking the time to give them a quote and stuff, and then getting nothing back from them. Not even a kind of rejection of like, what, we ended up going with so and so because of X, Y, Z, which is like complete disregard for you as a person. Like, you've put the time into this thing. And fuck it, I don't really care.
And I don't think that's exclusive to residential. I think that happens all over, and I think particularly it's interesting with just construction as a whole that there's this idea that you'll quote for free, and it probably is because most do. Everybody pretty much does, and there's not. I feel like the amount of work that some builders put into building a tender, we know, right? Because we help firms that do that. The amount of work that they put in, people don't really know, and it's a shame because a lot of guys and a lot of companies are spending, hundreds, thousands, and some, bigger contractual firms, millions in tendering, and they don't get any of that money back. And I think because homeowners don't think about it, or any clients don't think about it, and they can get away with it, and they just do it for free. So, in terms of going back to the idea of CRM to solve this or help with this problem, what do you think is, in your experience, like the area in that sales flow pipeline process where the ball gets dropped the biggest, that causes a builder or a contractor to set up a CRM or want to be like, okay, I need something different? Would you say it's in a certain area of the process? So
are you asking, when do I think they drop the ball as a builder, or at what point do they need?
Because in reality, most people don't act till something breaks. So another way to ask the question is, what is usually the thing what's the thing that breaks the camel's back, that causes someone to reach out and say, okay, I think I need a CR?
Well, okay, so this actually kind of connects with our previous, the discussion on people like, oh, I don't want to bug them, I don't, and also just, I've got work. The work that you're putting in terms of your leads, they don't come in till, later down the line. And it's actually when you go through a lean period or work starts drying up, and then they realize that's because way back, a couple months ago, we didn't bother following up on these leads because we were often it's because they were too busy doing the work, or building and they were on site or whatever. And it depends on what kind of capacity they have. Like, is it one guy, which is often, it can be the case, one guy doing procurement and also following up on leads and also going and checking on subbies, and you know what it's like. So that is often the point that when people realize, and then they go back to go, oh, why did I not speak to Mrs. Jones? Why did I not get back on that tender? Why did I not do? So that's kind of a breaking point where people realize, oh yeah, I need a CRM. But then also, but to kind of be more granular of where do they tend to drop the ball, I think it is that after they give a quote. I think there's the initial, especially if they're getting inbound inquiries, there's that initial kind of rush of, all right, great, this could be a good job, this could be good work. They get out the quote and they don't. I mean, maybe at the time they're thinking, oh yeah, I'll follow up on that. But then where are they writing that down? Like, where are they?
Yeah.
Who's reminding them to do that? What?
Yeah.
And do they even have a process for that? Because sometimes it's random. It's like, oh yeah, I've got to follow up on them. And then sometimes it's so.
I think actually another, you just made me think about another, one of the first hires that I did was bringing in a sales admin into my business, because a lot of those follow-ups you don't necessarily need to be doing. So the CRM really helps with that as well, because then you can delegate out some of those other less, complex sales tasks to other people.
Yeah.
And also,
definitely.
When emails come in with questions, like handling those questions in one place. So it's actually like an easy way to help with that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, I often say to people, because they go, oh no, I need to do that because I suppose, well, how do you think, if you think about the biggest companies within your industry, how do you think they're doing it? The owner's not running around, following up on every lead, is he? So
yeah,
I think you've got to think about how you can, still keep that personal touch, but then,
You hear my son crying in the background.
Yeah.
Didn't sleep this morning, so apologies if you can hear it, but also not apologies as well. I enjoy the freedom of being able to work when I can focus when he's around. In terms of if you decided you want or you think you need something to help organize yourself, then you've got like a plethora of softwares, right? Most of them are online now, so you don't download a piece of software onto your computer. So it's a website you log into, maybe an app. But have you usually got a way of deciphering like what's the best solution for X company? Like, where do you start? Is it budget? Is it like what's the existing process? Is it how quickly do you need to roll it out? Like, what do you think is the first thing someone should consider when deciding how to go about it?
I think you definitely want to think about what the use is, and you might. I'm pretty sure you've had this before where you haven't thought about it beforehand. You've jumped into a solution, and before you know it, you're like, oh, I really wish it could do that, or I wish it could connect with this, and it doesn't. And so I definitely think you want like a higher level view of like, okay, what is the purpose of this? I think actually nowadays with what all the capabilities of connecting different platforms, before everything was like very modular, you wouldn't really be able to have your Excel spreadsheet send information to your CRM or whatever, and you can do all that now. So you really want to make sure that all your things are talking to each other. They can talk to each other, and you can share information. And that's kind of it, really. I think that would be the main.
And would that mean that, in some sense, like if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I don't have anything, just got my emails and my phone and Word or Excel, you're a bit in a better place. Is it easier and simpler if you've got nothing? Is that
not necessarily, but as long, like, if you've gone deep into using, I know you mentioned Zoho before, which I haven't used Zoho in a long time. I don't know what it's like now, but if you go deep into that, into Zoho, for example, and you realize, oh, it doesn't do X. You know what? A perfect example is Build Trend, which, we've worked with people there. They use Builder Trend. It can work well for some things. It can work well for others. It doesn't have an open API. You cannot connect it with other platforms. And, they must be, pissed off with the number of times I messaged them asking, when are you going to have an open API? They must know me by, first name on first name basis. And, it's generally like, oh, it's in the pipeline, but it's not, don't know when it's going to happen. So, that, for example, that's an investment that you really need to go into with your eyes open.
Let me just shut this door. So on the API, it's probably worth clarifying. It is basically it's like you're saying, can the CRM that you choose connect with other softwares that you're using? So firstly, working out if that's a requirement, because if it is, then you want to make sure that whatever you choose can, or is it important that it can or not. I'm usually like the type of person that generally in business or making decisions, I'm like, I'll just go with something and work it out along the way. But because you do a lot of the implementation and I guess fixing of people that have made those types of decisions, because I think a lot of people in construction are like that.
Yeah.
How, not fatal, but how significant of a decision is it if you've gone down the wrong thing that doesn't work, and how quickly or how easy is it to like change CRM midway? Because I think sometimes with these things it can be overwhelming when you've got like so many different options with all these different features, and then you just do nothing because you're like, oh, I've got to choose the one that is like really right. But is it that big of an issue if you just get on with one and you just work it out? If it's a problem,
I
change
personally
over.
think no. I think it's as long as it has the ability for you to move over the data, which most things do now. It's not as common to not really be able to just download. Okay, I just want to download all this into like a spreadsheet, and then it might take some work to then put it into the new system. I would actually say I would prefer a client that has started trying on, say, Excel, because then in their mind they've started to figure out how they want this thing organized. It's when they don't have anything and then they think they want it in one way, but actually when you start implementing it, they're like, oh, no, I actually wanted that to be talking to that and that to be connected to that. And it's, because the reality is you can't map it all out perfectly before you just, start on it. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And the only thing I would say is like that you get the other side, don't you? People like just hopping from one thing to the next, and they're like, oh yeah, I was using Notion, and then now, I started off with Excel, and then I was using this, and then I found Zoho, then I found this random thing that I'd never heard of or something. And what generally I think with that, what's happened is they haven't even explored what that CRM is capable of, or maybe they need to like add in something else like make Zapier to like connect things up with something else, and then everything's fine. So that's the other sort of the side of the coin.
Yeah, I mean, my experience when I've changed over CRMs a few times in my day, and I found the biggest anxiety is, and it's basically when there's going to be some leads that are going to be dropped. The ball's going to be dropped in that transition period. I've always found that that's always the thing that does happen, and sometimes you just got to accept it. And in a way, it's sort of, I'd say, if you think your sales process is outgrowing your current CRM and your current CRM can't upgrade to what you need, then that is the decision to change is something that should probably be made sooner rather than later, because you don't want to get it to a point where it's like an uncontrollable
Yeah.
beast. Whereas other things, like we're talking about project management stuff, you can probably wait until something's about to break and then just like run two systems at once and do a transition slowly or something.
Yeah.
But with the sale, because it's like, you've got to do a follow up in this day and you've got to make sure this quote is out and all of that, usually a transition on a CRM, although the actual transfer is done over a day, it might be a week or two to like work things out. And I've found usually there's a few leads that are going to be dropped and stuff like that
Yeah.
in that time.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a consideration, and as you said earlier, the better, because you've really got to see this as a investment in your business, right? That's super important, because you can't. A lot of people go, well, why am I going to spend this on a system like this? This is still working well, and I might drop if you don't do it until it becomes a major problem. Then you could like have some real big cash flow issues if you lose a bunch of jobs and it's not working and stuff like that.
What kind of costs can one expect to incur when looking at the CRM? And is it something that, like, is it just the cost of the software that you got to consider?
Obviously it depends on how tech savvy you are, how proficient you are, and really, yes, you could. A lot of the stuff, if people have built it on an Excel spreadsheet and they're going to move it over to, I don't know, we're tending to recommend Smart Suite right now. ClickUp's another thing. These aren't CRMs, actually. They just have the capability to have a CRM built into them. It's basically bespoke no-code solutions. If you're tech savvy, you could probably build something yourself, but the time that it would take you is where I think the drain would be, and you've really got to think about like my time versus just paying someone to do it. So it could be free.
Just to
Essentially,
clarify,
what I'm saying is,
are you saying that there's, because my kind of extraction from that is that you've got the cost to set it up, and then but you've also got a cost of the actual thing as well, right? So there's two separate costs.
Yeah, so any platform's going to have its monthly cost based on how many users there are. If you're a very small company, you might get away with the free plan. And I would recommend people to always start with the free plan. Don't just dive in and pay for, a year-long subscription to something. Start with a trial, start with a free plan. A lot of these ones, they have like maybe 3 members, however many table solutions, whatever, would be free, for example. And if you're not looking for too many automations or anything, then you might just be able to get away with that. Otherwise, generally, you're looking at about £10 a month per person. Maybe the next level would be 25, 20 probably. A lot of these ones are dollars, so it'd be about 20 quid a month per person. But really, there are very few firms that need even the 20 quid a month per person deal. And if you're using that, if you're really using that to its full extent, you're definitely making enough to warrant the cost.
That's focused. So that's kind of on the lower scale, I think, of cost, right? So you're looking at where you pay per seat for a solution, and then it really can be upwards, as we've seen, right? You've got some solutions that will charge a few £1,000s for the year, but then include a certain number of seats as well. And then you're sort of saying that there's a development cost, and that could be zero except for your own time if you want to do it yourself, which if you're running a business, there is other costs involved in, what else you're doing with your time. And then depending on the complexity of it, to get somebody to do that as well. What it would be good if you could just explain a little bit about the idea of, I think you called it a no code project solution versus, let's say, like an off the shelf sales CRM that is maybe
Yeah.
specific to construction. So could you just maybe define those two and maybe give a few company names? We're not suggesting any of them necessarily, but I think just so people can kind of understand the difference if you've heard other people using them and stuff like that.
So I guess I'll give you three no-code solutions. Three no-code solutions would be something like Notion, Smart Suite, ClickUp. So these are solutions that, as in the name, no code. You do not need any coding knowledge to build something bespoke to how you want it. You can like implement bits of coding, or you can maybe employ a developer to do little bits if you want, like I want this to do that, etc. But really, you don't. That's what they're there for. They're there to allow people that don't know coding to build things that previously only coders would be able to do. And then the off-the-shelf solutions, I guess you've got your Procore, Builder-Trend, and they're obviously a lot more expensive and restrictive. So the no-code solution, the benefit is when you're using it, you can maybe your business develops over the course of 6 months to a year, and you want to add a new feature. You are adding the feature. Obviously it's within the limitations of what's possible on the platform. But you might want, I want this now to, connect with this. I want when I have a whole new stage in my pipeline. I'm now also working with architects and dealing with tenders. I wasn't doing that before. I need to add that whole thing into my current system that I'm using. Whereas if you're using Builder-Trend and you want some slight modification, you have to just talk to Builder-Trend and they tell you, yeah, we're going to do that, or that's on the roadmap for us to do it, in the course of 3 to 6 months. I don't know, and that's just if enough people ask for it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the interest of being fair to both options, because the some solutions work off the shelf as well. I'd say, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the advantage of going with a solution that is off the shelf is that there's usually less time to get it up and running and usable, because it's like more of a plug and play solution. But the sometimes challenge with that is that you've got to play in the way that they play, kind of thing.
Yeah,
they've got set ways of how to manage your valuations, how to do change orders. There's a set way because they've had to generalize the product to make it fit many. So sometimes if you're coming in as a business that's got set processes, you've got to be willing to change your processes to fit their solution, which maybe if you're quite a business without many processes or fairly new, that's not an issue, so it would be fine. And I think, again, from a cost point of view, I feel like maybe there's less upfront cost. It depends on how they build them, but it feels like less upfront cost initially for an off-the-shelf CRM. So your initial outlay may be less compared to if you were getting somebody to help you build out a more custom CRM for yourself. However, this is from my personal experience, and I won't say which platform I was on, that it looked cheap at first, but then as my business started growing and I needed more and more people, the costs get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I actually ended up at some point making the jump away from an off-the-shelf solution to a custom one, and partly was because of the cost. I was like, well, if my business doubles in size, like, this is going to get really expensive, and actually if I just invest in building out a custom that doesn't go up anywhere near as much, that may be.
And this is again, go back to the thing about it being an investment in your business. This is an investment in your business, and you wanna think about that, consider that before you jump into this, because you could go like deep into using one of these off the shelf solutions only to find that your business explodes,
Yeah.
and they're hoping you're like, oh well, okay, well I'm making enough money, so yeah, it doesn't matter if it's double
Yeah.
my expenses annually to pay for this. But it's also uh, you're further restricted. The bigger your business gets, the more quirks and you want to build your business to work in the way you want it to work. You don't really want to be restricted by the software, and there's no need to be. I think just in this day and age, there's just no need for that.
Cool. Well, I think that was an interesting topic. Definitely something that we deal with day in day out. So anybody that is listening, I think we're not stuck to a certain software. So if you do need some assistance, a bit of advice and implementation on rolling out software, feel free to get in contact with us on the links below. But I think the amount of background noise on today's call means that we should probably assign that we should wrap it up. I've heard dogs,
Yeah.
babies. I think I can hear a rooster in the background of your on your side as well. So I think that's a sign. Okay,
All right.
cool. Let's go, and I'll see you on office hours.